I went to university, I studied anthropology, I studied women's studies. I then worked in a rape crisis centre afterwards. Partly by accident, I was volunteering there and a job became available and so on. But it was a real confrontation with reality, which is not to say that everyone who works in the women's sector ends up reaching my conclusions. They definitely don't. But for me, looking at the gap between what I was experiencing during frontline work and what I had been taught as feminist theory shook my faith in feminist theory irreversibly, as it turned out.
Explain that, because what is the feminist theory? What's the received wisdom, if you like, about sexuality and relationships and so on? And what did you see that seemed to push up against that?
So I'd say the first domino to fall in terms of bringing me to the point where I wrote a book called The Cases Against the Sexual Revolution was to do with the trans movement, which I think Rod mentioned briefly already. It was a very, very hot button issue when I was at university. It was very, 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 very difficult to express any public skepticism about the claims of trans activists. I privately began to have my doubts. And I think that it was an important moment for me in the sense that once you think that one element of your ideology is flawed, it becomes much easier to think that other elements are as well. So, for instance, one of the dominant ideas in feminist thinking around sexual violence from 1970s onwards is this phrase from Susan Braumiller, rape is not about sex, it's about power. So the idea is that sexual violence is used by men as a tool to oppress women, and that it has nothing to do with sexual desire. It's all about dominating other people. There clearly is a degree of truth to it. For instance, sexual harassment in the workplace is almost always perpetrated by someone more senior to their victim. You know, clearly you don't see lots of junior men sexually abusing their female seniors. So clearly there is a little bit of truth to that. But I think in a fundamental way, it is wrong. And one of the things that made me think that it was wrong was looking at the age profile of the victims that I was dealing with and the age profile of perpetrators. The age profile of victims perfectly tracks the peak of female sexual attractiveness, and the age profile of perpetrators perfectly tracks the peak of male sex drive. You cannot explain that kind of data
purely in power terms.
No.
Yeah.
And I suppose, once I started off on that more data-driven road, I ended up writing this book 10 years later.
For early access to shows and for bonus content, register now at thebigconversation.show.